Book 3, Chapter 5 The Adventures of Sir Lancelot. Fast and far rode Sir Lancelot on his quest, seeking to find his way back to the castle of Carbonic, where already he had seen the Holy Grail passing dimly through the hall in the hands of the Grail Maiden. After many days' journey he came to the wastelands which had lain desolate ever since Balin struck the dolorous stroke in the first year of King Arthur's reign. But though he rode hither and thither through the desolation, he could not find any trace of the mysterious castle. One night as he rode wearily along, he came to a stone cross at the parting of two ways, and saw by the cross a slab of white marble, but it was so dark that Sir Lancelot could not clearly see what it was. Not far from the cross there stood an old chapel, its battered walls half hidden in dense folds of ivy. A light shone through the windows, and thinking to find people there of whom he could ask the way, Lancelot dismounted, tied his horse to a tree, and leaving his shield beside it, went to the chapel and tried the door. But it was firmly locked, and no one came when he hammered at it. At last he climbed up the ivy and looked in through the window, and inside he saw an altar covered in shining silk, on which stood a great silver candlestick with 7 branches, each holding a tall candle which lit up all the chapel. Then Lancelot desired greatly to enter, but he could neither open the door nor climb in through any window, so at length he gave up sadly. Returning to his horse, he unsaddled it, and taking off his sword and helmet, lay down to sleep near the stone cross. And so he fell asleep, and half waking and half sleeping, he saw drawing near 2 white horses bearing a litter in which lay a sick knight, and when he was near the cross the horses stopped. Then Lancelot, half waking and half sleeping, heard the sick man say, "Ah, sweet Lord, when shall this pain leave me? When shall thy holy vessel draw near to me and heal this pain which I have endured so long?" Then Lancelot saw the door of the chapel open, and the ancient hermit, Lancelyn, who had brought Galahad to Camelot, came out carrying the silver candlestick, which he set upon the marble block which now seemed like an altar in front of the cross. Then as Lancelyn stood beside the altar in prayer, suddenly the Holy Grail, covered in a fair white cloth, came gliding on a pure moonbeam and rested a while near the candles. And their light seemed as dim as if the sun shone, and dim also was the light of the full moon in the glorious brightness of the light within the covered Grail. The sick knight, crawling painfully on his hands and knees, drew near to the altar, and then, reaching out his hands, he touched the Holy Grail, and straightway he was cured of his sickness. Then as he knelt in prayer, the Holy Grail rose from the altar and passed on its way like the brightest star of heaven, and was lost to view. The knight rose slowly to his feet and bowed reverently to Lancelyn, the hermit. "Indeed I am well once more," he cried joyfully. "Thanks be to God, who has cured me by means of his holy vessel. But I am amazed to see this sleeping knight, who did not wake even when the Holy Grail drew so near to him." "He is held to the earth by his sins," answered Lancelyn. "This is Sir Lancelot of the Lake, a noble knight of the Round Table." "Heavy indeed must his sin be," said the knight, "for surely he is in quest of the Holy Grail." When he had said this, he took Sir Lancelot's helmet and sword, which Lancelyn held out to him, mounted upon Lancelot's horse, and rode away. Then Lancelyn took up the silver candlestick and went once more into the chapel, closing the door behind him. All this while Lancelot had lain unable to move, half sleeping and half waking, but presently, when the moon shone out again, he woke completely, and wondering whether he had dreamed or not, he went towards the stone cross. When he found that his sword, helmet, and horse had all disappeared, he knew that it had been no dream, and he said sadly, "My sin and my wickedness have brought me into great dishonor. When I sought only after worldly adventures, there was no quest too hard for me to accomplish. But now that I seek for holy things, my great sin comes between me and them, and I had no power to stir or speak when the Holy Grail drew near me." As he stood lamenting this, the chapel door opened again, and Lancelyn the hermit came out to him and said, "Lancelot, you ought to thank God more than any other knight now living. For in worldly fame no man can equal you, nor no, nor in beauty, strength, and honor for great deeds. But come now and lodge here with me, so that I may instruct you in spiritual things, and we will speak of your sins and examine how you may be forgiven them." "Alas," said Lancelot, "all my great deeds of arms have I done for the sake of Queen Guinevere, without stopping to think if they were right or wrong, and in loving her, who is the wife of my lord King Arthur, I have committed the great sin which keeps me from the Holy Grail." So for many days Lancelot remained with Nicias, confessing to him all that he had done wrong, and especially how he had married Elaine, thinking her to be Guinevere, and how since then he had never ceased to make love to the real Guinevere. "You must forswear all such thoughts," Nicias told him. "Elaine is dead long ago, and out of the evil of your marriage with her God has brought good, for Galahad, the holy knight of Logres, is her son and yours." Then he gave Lancelot a horse and a helmet, and sent him on his way once more. Many days after this Lancelot came to the seashore, and there, riding among the desolate sand dunes, he met a knight who carried a white shield with a great red cross on it. "Noble sir," said Lancelot, "it is many a long day since I met with any knight. Here is a fair open shore. Let us joust in friendly fashion." The stranger set his spear in rest at this, and the two of them rode together at full gallop, like a white flash of lightning and a red thunderbolt. Now Lancelot had thought to make easy conquest of his adversary, but what was his surprise and annoyance to find himself struck out of his saddle and sent sprawling on his back in the sand, while the stranger rode away down to a little bay where a strange ship was waiting for him. "By my faith," exclaimed Lancelot suddenly, "that must be none other than Sir Galahad. He is the only knight in the world who could overthrow me thus in a fair joust." Then he sprang on his horse with all haste and rode to the bayside, and there he found the enchanted ship in which Galahad, Bors, Percival, and Percival's sister were waiting for him. As soon as he came aboard, the ship moved by itself out of the bay and went floating away across the sea. Then the four knights rejoiced together and told each other of their adventures and of all the temptations which had beset them. Dindrain, Percival's sister, also told them many strange things which Nicias had told her, about Joseph of Arimathea, who had come to Britain in the enchanted ship, bringing with him the Holy Grail, and of the sword which Galahad wore, and many other things. But always when she spoke of the future it was of what was to happen to them, never of herself, and at last Percival said, "Fair sister, what of you, when we come to the wastelands and draw near to Castle Carbonic?" "I shall leave you before you come thither," she said, "though I know not how. But first we must visit the castle of the maiden, which we draw near to even now." Not long after this, the enchanted ship came into a deep bay with high cliffs on either side, and the four knights went on shore together with Dindrain, whom they followed up a little path among the rocks until they found themselves in a forest beyond the cliffs. They had not gone far through this when they came to a castle, but before ever they reached it, an armed knight rode up to them and said, "Lords, this gentlewoman that travels with you, is she a maid, or the wife of one of you?" "Sir," replied Dindrain, "I am a maid, and vowed to the service of God, to be a nun all the days of my life." When he heard this, the knight seized hold of her, exclaiming, "By the Holy Cross, you shall not escape me before you have fulfilled the custom of this castle." "Let her go," cried Percival. "Know you not that a holy virgin is free to wander where she will?" While they spoke, a troop of a dozen knights or more had come from the castle and closed in about them, and a little way behind came a damsel who carried a silver dish. "Nevertheless," repeated the first knight, "she must fulfill the custom." "What then is the custom of this castle?" asked Sir Galahad. "Sir," said the knight, "every maid that passes this way must fill this dish with blood from her right arm." "A wicked custom indeed," cried Galahad, "and this lady shall never suffer from it while I am left alive to protect her." So help me God," said Sir Percival, "I too had rather be slain." "And I," said Sir Lancelot and Sir Bors in one breath. "By my faith," said the knight, "you shall indeed die, all of you, even if you were the best knights in the world." Then a terrible battle began. The 4 knights of Logres stood back to back, with Perceval's sister in the middle, and the knights of the castle rode at them from every side, seeking to slay them. And they had come very near to it when there came out of the castle a knight clad in golden armor, who cried in a loud voice, "Cease the strife!" Then he said to the 4, who still guarded Dindrain, "Sirs, if you will come and pass the night in this castle, I promise you on my honor that you will suffer no harm, nor the lady either." "Let us go in," said Dindrain. "We will go with you," said Galahad to the Golden Knight. When they had rested and eaten, Galahad asked his host about the custom of the castle, and the Golden Knight led them to an upper chamber, where a lady lay upon a fair couch, very wasted and ill, and so feeble that she could scarcely move. "Sirs," said the Golden Knight, "this lady was a king's daughter of great virtue, but she was stricken by a wicked enchantment, from which she may never be healed save with the blood of a pure virgin, the noblest in the world. And for this reason we have stopped all maidens who pass this way and forced them to yield us this silver dish full of blood, but as yet our lady has not been healed." "Now," said Dindrain when she had heard this, "I see that it is for me to cure this lady if I may." "But if you bleed too much," cried Perceval, "you will die." "Yet must I chance that," she answered. Then she fulfilled the custom of the castle, and the lady rose from her bed as well and strong as any in the world. But Dindrain grew weaker and weaker, and nothing which any of them could do would stop the flow of her blood. "This is my fate," she said gently as Perceval and his comrades knelt weeping about her, "but I die worthily for the healing of this lady. Set me in a litter now, and bear me to the enchanted ship, and lay me therein when I am dead, and let the ship take me whither it will." So they made a litter, and the lady of the castle gave a horse to each of them, and the 2 white horses to bear the litter, and rode with them to the seashore, and laid Dindrain in the enchanted ship. But as they went towards it, they saw a wounded knight without armor riding desperately through the forest, and behind him an evil knight who sought to slay him. When the wounded man saw them, he cried out, "Help me, for God's love, or I shall be slain." "Truly," said Sir Galahad, "we must help him, for his sake on whom he calls." "Fair son," said Sir Lancelot, "let me ride after him, for there is but one knight striving to kill him." "Go you then," said Galahad, "and we shall meet at Carbonic if God wills it." So Lancelot rode away into the forest, and the rest continued on their way. And when they had seen the enchanted ship sail out to sea with Dindrain lying dead in the midst of it, Perceval said to them, "Fair friends, this night I will kneel upon the seashore and pray for the dear soul of my sister. But ride you back to the castle with this lady, and tomorrow I will follow you and meet you there if I may. But if not, we meet at Carbonic, for I, who have been there before, know well that it is not now far to seek." So Galahad and Bors rode away with the lady, and came in the late evening to the castle of the maiden. But when they drew near, they found that the fire of heaven had fallen upon it, and there stood naught but an empty shell of black hollow walls with never a living thing within them. "This is the vengeance for shedding the blood of maidens," said the lady of the castle, and she led them to a little chapel, where were many tombs of maidens who had died from the custom of that castle. "Alas," sobbed the lady, "through no will of mine I have brought this evil upon many." Then she departed from them and came after many days to the court of King Arthur, and told there of all that had chanced. But Sir Galahad and Sir Bors rode forward, side by side, through the wastelands toward the mysterious castle of Carbonic.